Drake just did the single most humiliating thing any global rap superstar has ever done on a live stream, and the internet has not stopped replaying the clip for 12 straight days. A 39-year-old billionaire, for Grammys deep, arenas sold out on 4 continents, got on camera in front of 120,000 live viewers and barked. Not once. Not twice. 3 separate times. Then he whimpered. He actually whimpered on a microphone for a Goth streamer named Pinku on a Kik dating show sponsored by a gambling company, and the second the audio hit Twitter it was over. Drake did not lose a rap battle this time. Drake lost the last thing a rapper can never afford to lose, and that is the invisible thing every artist in hip-hop builds their entire empire on top of. Drake lost his aura. And in the next 20 minutes, I am going to walk you through every single frame of what happened on August 8th, 2026, why it is 1,000 times worse than anybody is currently reporting, what Drake tried to do 2 days later to clean it up, and why that made it exponentially worse, and the one detail from 2 years ago that turns this whole meltdown into the most poetic career suicide the streaming era has ever produced. Sit down. Lock in. Because this is not a meme. This is the receipt. Let me put you inside the room. August 8th, 2026, a Saturday night, prime traffic hours on Kik, the streaming platform that has quietly become the loudest room in the entire creator economy. The Nelk Boys are hosting what they are calling a 20 versus 1 dating show, essentially a live stream spectacle where 20 women compete for the attention of a single male content creator. And the whole event is being run as a promotional push for the 9th anniversary of Stake, the crypto gambling site that has been paying rappers, athletes, and streamers 8 and 9 figures to keep its logo in the cultural bloodstream. This is not a small stream. This is a full-blown production. Cameras, lighting, a moderator, sponsor read-ins, a live chat scrolling faster than any human can read it, and the numbers are absolutely stupid. Kik is registering somewhere in the neighborhood of 120,000 concurrent viewers when Drake walks on. Let me repeat that number so it sits properly in your ear. 120,000 people are watching in real time when Aubrey Drake Graham, one of the 3 biggest recording artists of the last 15 years, decides to appear as a surprise guest on a Kik dating show for a gambling sponsor. Already, before he opens his mouth, the framing is wrong. Drake is not the guest star of a Nelk Boys stream. Drake is supposed to be the ceiling. Drake is supposed to be the guy Nelk begs to shout them out. Drake showing up here, in this context, on this platform, for this sponsor, is already a status downgrade before the barking starts. And that is the piece nobody is talking about. The humiliation started before the humiliation. Drake walks in, the chat explodes, and the format of the show is simple. The 20 women take turns trying to get Drake's attention. One of them is a girl who goes by Pinku, 23 years old, alternative aesthetic, black lipstick, silver septum, dyed hair, the whole Goth streamer template that has taken over the algorithm in 2026. Pinku barely says anything at first. She just looks at him. And the second Pinku locks eyes with Drake, something in the room shifts. You can see it on camera. Drake's shoulders drop. His voice pitches up. He leans in. He is not performing for the audience anymore. Drake is performing for Pinku. And then Pinku says one word. She says, sit. Drake laughs. The chat laughs. Nelk laughs. Then Pinku says it again. Sit. And Drake, 39 years old, for Grammys, 16 #1 Billboard hits, over 130 billion streams across his catalog, actually leans forward toward the microphone and says the words good boy. Then Pinku tells him to speak. And Drake barks. He barks a full deep-throated woof into the microphone. Then he does it again. Then he does it a 3rd time. And then, and this is the clip that broke the internet, Drake whimpers. He makes a small pathetic whining sound into the microphone, the kind of sound a dog makes when it wants a treat, and he says, I know exactly what the rules are. Would you pour it through me? Good boy. The chat froze. Nelk froze. The moderator laughed, but you could hear the laugh crack in the middle, because even he did not know what he was supposed to do with what just happened. And within 4 minutes of the clip going live, it was already on Twitter. Within 11 minutes it was on TikTok. Within an hour it had crossed 50 million impressions. By the following morning, August 9th, 2026, the clip of Drake barking for Pinku had crossed 300 million combined views across every platform on the internet, and Drake had not tweeted a single word about it. Now I need you to understand something, and I need you to understand it deeply, because if you do not understand this next part you will think this is just a funny clip. This is not a funny clip. This is a career-defining rupture, and here is why. Drake's entire artistic brand for 15 years has been built on one central premise, and that premise is control. Drake is the guy who controls the narrative. Drake is the guy who chooses when to appear. Drake is the guy who picks the feature, picks the beat, picks the moment, picks the timing. Every Drake rollout since Take Care in 2011 has been engineered around the idea that Drake is the man behind the curtain, pulling the strings. Even his losses have been controlled losses. When Kendrick Lamar dismantled him on Not Like Us in 2024, Drake's team spent the next 18 months trying to reframe that battle as a Pyrrhic victory for Kendrick, and to a certain audience, they almost sold it. Because Drake, at the deepest level, has always been in the driver's seat of his own myth. What happened on August 8, 2026, is the first time in Drake's entire career that Drake was not in control of the frame. Pinku was in control of the frame. A 23-year-old goth streamer with fewer than 400,000 followers made a 39-year-old billionaire rap icon bark on command in front of 120,000 people. That is not a meme. That is a transfer of power. And once the transfer of power happens on camera, the audience never sees the powerful party the same way again. Ask Kanye. Ask Diddy. Ask any artist who ever let one clip get away from them. The clip becomes the character. And the character replaces the artist. And if you think that is bad, wait until I tell you what Drake posted 48 hours later on his own Instagram story, because it is the exact opposite of what he told another streamer to do 2 years ago. And once you see the receipts side by side, you will understand that Drake did not just embarrass himself on August 8th. Drake publicly betrayed a piece of advice he gave in 2024 that the entire hip-hop internet already had screenshotted. Stay with me because this is where it gets biblical. Rewind the calendar to late 2024. Drake is doing a private call with Adin Ross, at that point the biggest political streamer on Kick, a kid who had built an audience on chaos, women, cars, and controversy. Adin, on that call, is talking to Drake about a segment he had done where he barked at a female guest as a bit. It was crude, it was juvenile, it was clickbait, and Drake, older, wiser, allegedly the mentor in the conversation, told Adin directly, and I am quoting the leaked audio here, "Do not bark at women on camera because it ruins your brand. It makes you look like you are begging, and the internet will hold that clip against you for the rest of your career." That was Drake's advice. Drake, in 2024, warned another creator that barking at women on stream would end them. Drake used the word ruin. Drake used the word begging. Drake told Adin Ross, on the record, that this exact behavior was career poison. That clip has been sitting quietly on the internet for almost 2 years. Nobody was thinking about it. Nobody had reason to pull it back up. And then on August 8, 2026, Drake walked onto a Kick stream and did the precise thing he told Adin Ross would end a career. He barked. On camera. For a woman. For clicks. For a gambling sponsor. And within 6 hours, somebody pulled the 2024 audio and cut it directly against the 2026 clip, and that split-screen video is currently sitting at over 90 million views on Twitter alone. There is no world in which Drake's team did not see that split screen coming. There is no world in which Drake himself did not know, in the moment he leaned into the microphone, that a version of him from 2 years ago was going to be dug up and used as the murder weapon. And he did it anyway. Which brings us to the next question, and it is the question that changes this entire story from a meme into a diagnosis. Why would Drake do this to himself? The answer starts with what Drake did next. August 10, 2026, 48 hours after the Pinku clip goes global, Drake posts a 14-second video to his Instagram story. In the video, Drake is in what looks like a hotel room in Toronto, no shirt, gold chain, phone held at arm's length, and he says, and this is verbatim from the story before it expired, I want to retract everything I said before. Dogs are the most honest creatures on this planet. If a girl tells me to bark, I am barking. That is called being present. That is called being in the moment. Y'all can save the lecture. Then he laughs. Then the story ends. That is Drake, on his own official account, followed by 145 million people, publicly retracting the advice he gave Adin Ross in 2024. He did not delete the Pinku clip. He did not apologize. He did not clarify. He leaned into it. Drake looked at the biggest self-inflicted brand wound of his career and decided the correct response was to pour lighter fluid on it. And here is where the professional analysts inside the room have to be honest about what we are watching. This is not confidence. This is not owning the moment. This is a man who has completely run out of moves. Because if Drake had a hit single ready to drop, if Drake had a Super Bowl announcement in the chamber, if Drake had a stadium tour, If Drake had a courtroom win against Universal Music Group, if Drake had any version of a traditional artist comeback lever left to pull, he would have pulled it. He would not have gone on Kick. He would not have barked. He would not have retracted his own advice on his own Instagram story. Drake is doing the Goth streamer bit because Drake has nothing else. That is the piece nobody is saying out loud. The bark is not the humiliation. The bark is the symptom. The humiliation is that Drake has been reduced to competing with content creators 1/20th of his net worth for the same clip economy attention. And you have not even heard the worst part yet. Because on August 12, 2026, 4 days after the Pinku incident, a former member of Drake's OVO management team went on a podcast in Los Angeles and dropped a piece of information about what has been happening behind the scenes at OVO for the last 8 months that reframes everything you just heard. What this insider said explains exactly why Drake ended up on Kick in the first place, and it involves a number that is going to make your stomach drop. Stay with me because this is where the story stops being about a clip and starts being about the entire collapse of a music empire. The former OVO staffer, who spoke to Bootleg Kev on his podcast on August 12, 2026, said that OVO Sound, Drake's flagship label imprint, is currently operating at what he described as, and I am using his exact phrasing here, a 9-figure operating loss over the trailing 12 months. 9 figures. That means a minimum of $100 million in the red across the last 4 fiscal quarters. The staffer said that Drake's touring revenue is still healthy, but that the label itself, the artist development arm, the merchandising arm, and the fashion collaboration arm are all bleeding. He said that Universal Music Group, Drake's distribution partner, has quietly been pulling back marketing spend on new Drake releases since the Kendrick Lamar situation in 2024, and that Drake's per-single marketing budget has been slashed by an estimated 62% since the release of For All the Dogs Scary Hours edition. The staffer said that Drake has personally been floating money into OVO from his own touring cash flow to keep the lights on, and that the stake gambling sponsorship that put him on the Nelk Boys stream on August 8th was, quote, one of the last major 8-figure checks Drake has secured in the entire calendar year. Read that sentence again. One of the last major 8-figure checks Drake has secured in the entire calendar year. This is a man who is making $30 to $50 million per feature versus 3 years ago. This is a man who is booking $300 million tours without breaking a sweat. Drake in 2026 is now in a position where a kick stream for a crypto gambling site is not beneath him because Drake in 2026 cannot afford for it to be beneath him. The bark was not a lapse in judgment. The bark was a contractual deliverable. Stake paid for Drake to make content that would go viral. Drake made content that went viral. Drake fulfilled the contract. What Drake did not calculate, or what Drake calculated and accepted anyway, was that the type of viral content he was being paid to produce was the exact type of viral content that permanently changes how an audience perceives an artist. And that is the trap. That is the exact trap that every legacy artist in 2026 is currently walking into, and Drake just became the largest and most public example of it. Let me put this into context for you, because I want you to understand that what is happening to Drake right now is not unprecedented. It has happened before, and every single time it has happened, the artist has never recovered their original altitude. In 2016, Kanye West got on stage in Sacramento and rambled about Beyoncé, Jay-Z, and Hillary Clinton for 17 minutes before cutting the show short. Kanye at that point was arguably the biggest creative force in music. Kanye never got back to that altitude. Every album after that was a slow decline in critical reception, in commercial reception, and in cultural centrality. In 2019, R. Kelly sat down with Gayle King and screamed at the ceiling for 11 minutes. R. Kelly at that point still had a legal defense, still had a fan base, still had radio play. The Gayle King clip ended him culturally in a single afternoon. In 2022, Kanye again, this time on Alex Jones, said the words that ended his corporate partnerships within 9 days. Every single one of these moments has the same structure. The artist is under financial or reputational pressure. The artist agrees to a piece of media that they believe they can control. The artist loses control of the frame inside that media. The clip escapes. The clip becomes the character. And the character eats the artist. Drake, on August 8, 2026, walked directly into the middle chapter of that same story. Drake is not Kanye and Drake is not R. Kelly, and I am not suggesting the moral equivalence is the same. What I am telling you is that the mechanical shape of the collapse is identical, and the shape is what tells you what happens next. What happens next is not another hit single. What happens next is not a reset. What happens next is a 2 to 3 year slow bleed in which every subsequent Drake move is measured against the bark, and eventually the bark stops being the thing people bring up and starts being the thing people assume. That is when the artist is finished, not when the clip drops, but when the clip becomes the default assumption. And if that sounds harsh, I need you to hear what Kendrick Lamar's camp reportedly said behind closed doors on August 9th, 24 hours after the Pinku clip went viral. Because there is a message that came out of TD that has not been officially confirmed, but has been repeated by 3 separate industry sources, and if the message is real, it is the single coldest response any rapper has ever delivered to another rapper's downfall, and it did not require a single bar. The reported message from Kendrick Lamar's camp, allegedly relayed through a senior TD executive to a well-connected LA-based journalist on August 9, 2026, was 6 words long. The 6 words were, "We do not need to respond." That is the entire message. We do not need to respond. Think about what that means. Kendrick Lamar spent 2024 dismantling Drake bar by bar, verse by verse, on Euphoria, on 616 in LA, on Meet the Grahams, and on Not Like Us. The song that spent 19 weeks on the Billboard Hot 100 and became the first diss track in history to win the Grammy for Song of the Year. Kendrick, in 2024, had to write. Kendrick, in 2024, had to record. Kendrick, in 2024, had to shoot a music video at the Compton house Drake grew up visiting as a child in order to complete the assassination. In 2026, Kendrick does not have to do any of that. In 2026, Drake barks on a kick stream for a goth girl and does the job for him. That is the coldest twist in this entire story. Drake spent 2 years trying to convince the world that Kendrick had not really won, that the discourse was more complicated than the songs made it sound, that Drake's numbers were still Drake's numbers. And then in one Saturday night on Kick, Drake handed Kendrick the final piece of evidence Kendrick never had to write. The bark is the closing argument. Kendrick just lets the clip loop. That is what 6 words means. We do not need to respond means the fight is over. The fight was over on August 8, 2026, at approximately 9:47 p.m. Eastern Time, on a Kick dating stream sponsored by Steak, when Drake said the words "good boy" for the 2nd time in a row. The industry reaction has been telling in what it has not said. As of August 20th, 2026, 12 days after the Pinku incident, not a single major artist on Universal Music Group's roster has posted a public defense of Drake. Not Nicki Minaj, who has historically been Drake's most vocal defender. Not Lil Wayne, who signed Drake to Young Money and mentored him through his early career. Not J. Cole, who withdrew from the 2024 battle and has since kept quiet on the entire Drake situation. Not Future, who spent 5 years as Drake's most consistent collaborator on What a Time to Be Alive and beyond. The silence is coordinated, and in the music industry the coordinated silence is always louder than any statement. Meanwhile, the artists who are talking are the artists Drake used to dismiss. Rick Ross, still on his podcast tour, laughed about the Pinku clip for 8 straight minutes on the Joe Budden podcast on August 11th. Joe Budden himself compared Drake to a, quote, aging fighter taking one exhibition match too many. Charlemagne the God gave Drake Donkey of the Day on August 11th, 2026, and spent 9 minutes explaining that Drake had officially entered what Charlemagne called the desperation era of his career. Even Meek Mill, who has been publicly friendly with Drake since their 2018 reconciliation, tweeted a single dog emoji on August 12th and then deleted it 7 minutes later. Meek Mill's dog emoji is more damning than any of the podcast takes, because Meek Mill knows exactly what he is doing, and Meek Mill knows that Drake will see it, and Meek Mill posted it anyway. The entire hip-hop internet has quietly decided that Drake is now open season. That is what the silence and the emojis add up to. Drake, in 2026, has become a punchline that other rappers can safely land without fear of retaliation. 2 years ago, that would have been suicide. 2 years ago, Drake would have flown to your city, sat outside your studio, and made a diss track about you in 48 hours. In 2026, Drake will not do that. Because Drake, in 2026, cannot afford to do that. Drake in 2026 needs the kick check more than Drake in 2026 needs the pride. And every single person in the industry can smell it. And I have not even told you what Pinku herself did in the 72 hours after the clip went viral, and what she is now allegedly being offered by 4 different major record labels, because Pinku's story is the twist inside the twist. And once you hear what her Monday morning looked like, you are going to realize that Drake did not just lose the Aura War on August 8, 2026. Drake accidentally launched somebody else's entire career. Pinku, whose real name has not been publicly confirmed but who is widely believed to be a 23-year-old creator based out of Portland, Oregon, went from 380,000 followers on Instagram on the morning of August 8th, 2026 to 4.1 million followers by the morning of August 11th. That is a growth rate of over 10 times in 72 hours. Her TikTok crossed 2 million followers by August 10th. Her Kick channel, which had a peak concurrent viewership of about 1,400 before the Drake stream, hit 192,000 concurrent viewers on her follow-up solo stream on August 9th, 2026. On August 10th, according to a source at Complex, Pinku was reportedly offered a six-figure development deal by a subsidiary of a major label to release a spoken-word EP based on the audio of Drake barking. On August 11th, she was reportedly approached by 3 separate reality television production companies. On August 12th, a fashion brand out of Los Angeles offered her a $250,000 campaign fee to appear in a fall lookbook wearing a dog collar. Pinku has not accepted any of these offers publicly as of August 20th, 2026, but she has retained a manager and a talent lawyer, both of whom are veterans of the influencer to mainstream crossover pipeline. What Pinku did in one weekend, using nothing but a nose ring, a black lipstick, and the word sit, is exactly the type of career leap that people spend a decade in the algorithm trying to engineer. And she got it by accident, in a chair across from a man who used to be the biggest star in the world. The framing of that outcome is what makes it so devastating for Drake. Drake did not just get embarrassed. Drake became the launching pad for the person who embarrassed him. And every time somebody in 2027, 2028, 2029 books Pinku for a podcast, an interview, a red carpet, a brand deal, the first question is going to be the same. Every single time. Tell us about the Drake stream. Drake will be a footnote inside somebody else's origin story. That is the actual final humiliation. Not the bark. Not the whimper. Not the retraction. The footnote. And if you think Drake's team is not aware of exactly how bad this is, you are wrong, because there is one specific move Drake's legal team made on August 15th, 2026, that has not been widely reported anywhere in the mainstream press yet. And it tells you everything you need to know about how the inside of the OVO building is currently panicking. On August 15th, 2026, according to a filing that was quietly logged in the Northern District of California, a legal team representing Drake's holding company, Dream Crew Entertainment, submitted a cease and desist request against 17 separate content creators who had uploaded remixes, edits, and derivative works based on the Pinku bark audio. 17. The cease and desist letters allege unauthorized use of Drake's voice, unauthorized use of his likeness, and unauthorized commercial exploitation of a protected creative performance. Let me unpack that phrasing for you, because it is legally insane and psychologically revealing. Drake's own attorneys are now arguing, on the record, in a federal filing, that Drake barking like a dog for a goth streamer on a Kick dating show is a, quote, protected creative performance. That is the phrase they used. Protected creative performance. Drake's legal team is trying to reframe the single worst clip of his career as a piece of art. And by trying to protect it as art, they are also trying to control who is allowed to make fun of it. This is the exact move Kanye's team tried in 2018 when the Sacramento rant footage started getting remixed. It failed then. It is going to fail now. You cannot copyright a humiliation. You cannot cease and desist a meme. The clip belongs to the internet the second it hits the internet, and the more aggressively Drake's team tries to litigate around the edges of it, the more oxygen they pump into it. Which is what is currently happening. As of the morning of August 20th, 2026, the Pinku bark audio has been used in over 1.7 million short-form video uploads across TikTok, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts. Every single cease and desist letter that goes out generates another 20,000 uploads. The Streisand effect is not a theory in this case. It is a measurable curve. And Drake's team either does not understand that curve, or they understand it, and they have decided that the optics of doing nothing would be worse. Either interpretation is bad. Either interpretation confirms that the OVO building is currently making decisions from fear, not from strategy. And there is one final piece of this story that I have been saving for the end, because it is the piece that turns everything you have just heard into a completed circle. And it involves a lyric Drake wrote in 2015 that is now being replayed all over the internet as if it were a prophecy of the exact night on August 8th, 2026, when everything fell apart. Stay with me for the last 2 minutes, because this is the part that gave me chills when I put it together. On the song 6 p.m. in New York, released as the closing track of the surprise mixtape, if you're reading this it's too late, in February 2015, Drake wrote the following line. And I am going to read it exactly as it appears on the studio recording. The line is, quote, "The game needs new heroes, not the same rappers doing the same shit. Y'all gone, turn me into an old head," unquote. That line, written by a 28-year-old Drake at the absolute peak of his ascent, is now the single most quoted lyric on hip-hop Twitter in August 2026. The reason it is being quoted is because Drake, at 39 years old, in the middle of a kick stream sponsored by a gambling company, barking for a 23-year-old Goth streamer, is doing exactly what he warned himself against in 2015. He is the same rapper doing the same shit. He is the old head. He is the guy the audience is turning against. And the thing about that lyric is that Drake knew it. Drake, at 28, already saw this coming. Drake, at 28, understood the arc. And Drake, at 39, walked directly into it anyway, because when the money gets tight and the label pulls back and the tour is the only thing keeping the lights on and the stake check clears and Kendrick has already won the war of the songs, you take the meeting. You show up on the kick stream. You sit down across from the goth girl. And when she tells you to bark, you bark. Because at that point, dignity is more expensive than the check. And the check pays for the building. That is the story of Drake in August 2026. Not the meme. Not the whimper. Not the retraction. The story is that a man who used to be able to afford dignity found himself in a room where dignity was the price of admission, and he paid it, and the receipt is going to follow him for the rest of his career. And I want to slow down here for one full minute, because I need to define a term for you that I have been using through this entire breakdown, and the term is aura bankruptcy. Aura bankruptcy is a measurable pattern that happens to public figures, and it has 3 specific stages, and Drake entered stage 3 on live television on August 8th. Stage 1 of aura bankruptcy is when the artist starts appearing in contexts that are below their previous ceiling. Drake entered stage 1 in early 2025 when he started appearing on Kai Cenat's stream instead of hosting his own OVO Fest specials. That was the tell. Stage 2 is when the artist starts publicly reacting to critics who used to be beneath their attention. Drake entered stage 2 in the middle of 2025 when he began replying to random Twitter accounts with fewer than 5,000 followers about the Kendrick situation, accounts that no version of pre-2024 Drake would have ever acknowledged existed. Stage 3 is when the artist performs the humiliation themselves, on camera, for money, and tries to sell it as authenticity. Barking for Pinku on a kick stream sponsored by a gambling company is not a mistake. It is the terminal stage of a 3-year descent that anybody paying attention could have plotted on a graph. And once an artist enters stage 3 of aura bankruptcy, the return path is not a hit record. The return path is a 5 to 7 year cultural cool-down period where the artist has to disappear entirely and let the audience forget the character the clip created. Drake does not have 5 to 7 years. Drake is 39 years old. Drake's touring window in hip-hop, historically, closes somewhere between 45 and 48. The math does not work. That is the piece that turns this from a bad night into a career diagnosis. So here is where we are on August 20th, 2026, 12 days after the Pinku incident. Drake has not released a new song. Drake has not announced a tour date. Drake has not scheduled a press appearance. Drake's Instagram has posted 3 photos in 12 days, all of them workout content, none of them addressing the clip directly. OVO has been silent. Universal Music Group has been silent. The only sound coming out of Drake's camp is the sound of legal letters going out to remix creators, and every letter that goes out becomes another 20,000 memes. The Bark loop has now been streamed more times than half of Drake's studio catalog. The Pinku audio has been sampled on at least 4 songs that have entered the Billboard Hot 100. A 9th grader in Ohio is currently the #1 trending audio on TikTok using a mashup of Drake's Bark against the intro of God's Plan. Drake in 2026 has become source material for other people's viral moments. That is not a career. That is a compost heap that other artists are growing their careers on top of. And the tragedy is that Drake, at his peak, understood the difference. Drake at his peak knew that being the source material for other people's moments was the exact opposite of being an artist. Drake at his peak would have burned the entire building down before he allowed himself to become somebody else's punchline. Drake in 2026 is the building. And the fire is already inside it. Now I want to hear from you in the comment section, and I want you to be honest, because I already know the split on this is going to be somewhere around 60 to 40, and I want to see if I am right. Do you think Drake can recover from the Pinku moment? And if you do think he can recover, what is the exact move? Drop a comment below and use the format recovery move : and then your idea. I am reading every single comment on this video for the next 48 hours, and I am pinning the 3 most interesting ones to the top of the thread. If you think Drake is finished, drop the word finished in the comments. If you think Drake is still eating, drop the word eating. I will tally the numbers on the community tab on Saturday. And if this breakdown gave you a piece of the story you had not seen anywhere else, hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Because I have already been working on the next piece, and it involves what a certain unnamed Cash Money executive said about Drake's next album cycle on a phone call on August 17th, 2026, and that video is dropping this Sunday. Do not miss it. Lock in. Because the story of Drake in 2026 is not over. The story of Drake in 2026 is just entering its second act. And the second act, as anybody who has studied this game knows, is always where the real damage gets done. Before you click off, I want you to click the video on your screen right now, because in that video I broke down the exact 5 signs that told me 6 months ago that Drake was heading for a public collapse, and every single one of those signs is now visible in the rearview mirror. Watch that video next and tell me in the comments which of the 5 signs you saw first. I will see you inside. Lock in.